Hey, if you're a Led Zeppelin fan, I found something I think you're going to really enjoy. This is an article, a newspaper article that was written it was printed February 17th of 1975, and this is in the Miami News. And it was actually written by George Will. George Will is a really famous columnist, and the reason I liked this so much is not because he actually seemed to like Led Zeppelin, but it's kind of a really cool snapshot in time of this very famous columnist and his reaction to a group, Led Zeppelin, that would go on to have such a massive impact on music and popular culture, and even today. You know, I make a Led Zeppelin video on this channel, and people just watch it. You know, because like me, there's so many people today that look back still and just go, that was one of the greatest bands, and what those guys brought to the world was so significant. And so going back to this period, especially in the mid-70s, and reading what people had to say at the time, you know, because Led Zeppelin was huge at the time. So anyway, I think you'll enjoy this. I'm just going to read this article to you. Again, this is George Will, and his little article, he called it Blitzed by Led Zeppelin. Washington. As the American plowman homeward plods his weary way, he is weighed down by the certainty that his offspring, who in a less blessed age would be curled up like little Lincolns on a warm hearth reading Pilgrim's Progress, will be huddled around a warm stereo, curse you rural electrification, listening to the Led Zeppelin. When Led Zeppelin descended on Washington recently, 18,700 concert tickets were snapped up in 3 hours. Some people who could not get tickets vented their disappointment just as, perhaps, disappointed Viennese did when they could not get into a Mozart recital. Hey, hold on for just a second. We'll get right back to the video. But if you like this stuff, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, leave any comments. We'd love to hear from you, and we really, really appreciate it. Anyway, with that, back to the video. They threw bottles at the police. The tempestuous behavior by disappointed ticket seekers called to mind the sporadic violence in gas station lines last winter during the oil embargo, the other recent shortage of life-sustaining commodity. Rock music is to the youth culture what gasoline is to the more adult culture. It is that without which life lacks tang. Led Zeppelin, one of society's vigorously vibrating ganglions, has been a roaring success for 6 years. That is a Methuselian age among rock groups, most of whose names, remember the Peanut Butter Conspiracy, the Strawberry Alarm Clock, are writ on water. And that's actually a really good point. We sometimes forget the fickle nature of the music business. You know, we have these groups that come in that become super, super famous, and then we think they're going to be around forever, or they're somehow, you know, they're these big thing, they're selling out stadiums and arenas, and then a couple years later, we forget that they even existed. It's amazing the fickle nature of the music business. And there just aren't that many groups, like Led Zeppelin, for example, that manage to create something that just sticks around for years after years, after decade. And so here he's just being amazed by 6 years later, Led Zeppelin's still cranking, still going. Tom Zito, who, as God is my witness, is paid by the Washington Post to know such things, says Led Zeppelin is the, quote, world's most popular rock and roll band. That may be an extravagant encomium, but the 4 Led Zeppeliners are weathering the recession nicely. On a recent 2-month tour in their private 707, they streaked like jagged lightning around the cities of the plain, siphoning $5 million from American youths. 56,800 in one sitting in Tampa. Before I bought the Led Zeppelin album, to which I am listening as I write this, the group had sold 10 million albums for reasons that, as I listen, no longer elude me. And that's the part I thought was interesting about this. that George Will here had actually, he got it. And, we've done other videos before. We've talked about different Led Zeppelin albums. The last one we did specifically, we were talking about Led Zeppelin 3 and how that kind of caught people off guard. But so many things about Led Zeppelin, not only were they just, such a spectacular band and the music was so good and the production was so amazing. And of course, we don't have a lot of live recordings of them. And the one that we do have, The Song Remains the Same, is kind of, I don't know, they didn't really like it. I don't think Jimmy Page was thrilled with it. And honestly, when I watch it, when I first saw it, I was kind of underwhelmed, I hate to say, for various reasons. Robert Plant just didn't, when you listen to rock and roll in the studio and then you listen to rock and roll and The Song Remains the Same, it's like, it just doesn't have that thing. But in the studio, they were so good. And even albums like the one that we talked about before, which was Led Zeppelin 3, and I've done several videos on that one, especially because I have like a Chinese bootleg of it. And so I've talked about that album a lot. But even that one, that takes a little bit of, it's an acquired taste. You realize the brilliance behind the stuff, even if you don't get it at first. And then you come back to it and you come back to it and you get to a point you go, this was so much better than I even realized the first time I heard it. And you listen to George Will here, and this, I think he's kind of playing on this point here. Before I bought the Led Zeppelin album to which I'm listening as I write this, the group had sold 10 million albums for reasons that, as I listen, no longer elude me. Like, he gets it. It sounds like music to invade Poland by, not to soothe a savage beast. But Led Zeppelin's sound, called, quote, heavy metal music, is soothing to adolescents. Adolescents are notoriously insecure, and for that reason, passionately egalitarian. They derive security from a shared private culture that is unintelligible to adults. And that's probably true with every generation. But it's fascinating listening to this whole idea, soothing to adolescence. And I got to tell you, as a teenager, when I first discovered Led Zeppelin, there's a lot of truth to that. Even the really heavy-hitting stuff, there's something about it that you just connect to. And in some weird way, as an adolescent boy especially, the testosterone raging, there's something soothing to that connection. Like this music, like almost like the music gets me. The first time you hear Black Dog, hey, mama said the way you move, and that riff as it kicks in, man, there's just something about that you just feel like you connect to it. And there's so many Led Zeppelin songs that have that kind of thing. He goes on, the, quote, heavy metal sound blows listeners down like grass before the wind. That might not sound like fun to you, but as is said, different strokes for different folks. Adolescents stand on the brink of the adult meritocracy. They're constantly examined and graded and ranked, but Led Zeppelin and their love of it is immune to critical scrutiny. Led Zeppelin performing like Mount Vesuvius erupting overloads the ear, overwhelms the ability to hear nuances. Indeed, heavy metal, a sensory blitzkrieg, is the definitive revolt against nuances. It's an interesting way that he says that, and I'd actually like to get a group of people together and talk through his commentary about this, because that can be taken a few different ways that I don't know that I completely agree with. But especially, Jimmy Page was so careful about the production on these songs, and they were nuance rich, in my opinion. And not just the individual songs, but the variety of what they would do. Because you go to Led Zeppelin, and this is one of the things that they mastered that so few groups have been able to do. The Beatles were able to do this. U2 on some level was able to do this, but not a lot of others do, where they actually have a library of music that spans this wide range of styles. Because you look at Led Zeppelin, and of course, you have something like Black Dog, like I mentioned. And then on that same album, you have Battle of Evermore. Like these two totally different ideas. Then you flip the thing over and you've got When the Levee Breaks, which is this rehashed blues thing from the 1920s. And then you move from album to album, you go to Kashmir, a few albums later, which has that Middle Eastern sound. You jump forward to their last In Through the Outdoor, the song Hot Dog, which is a country song. And then back, to the early days where you've got Gallows Pole on Led Zeppelin 3, and then which also on that same album has the Immigrant Song. And just back and forth. And each one of these songs, not only do they have this massive variety, but I think there is a great deal of nuance. So anyway, maybe I'm misunderstanding what his point is here, but I'd really love to have a group of people that know Zeppelin and know some of this stuff that could have a discussion about these ideas and what this all means. And then the article wraps up. It is impossible for adults to apply their hated standards to this music that is a refuge from the adult world. As regards heavy metal, all ears are equal. And he doesn't go into great detail here, but he clearly, as he said earlier in the article, for reasons as I listen to no longer elude me, he understands why. And matter of fact, and obviously he bought this album to listen to. He's listening to one there as he's writing this article. Because on some level, for some reason, that the band Led Zeppelin just created this place that just, it seems like everybody likes something that they did. And most people probably like a lot of the music that Led Zeppelin put out. And yeah, there's some discussion about what happened live, because even, you look at the reproductions of Stairway to Heaven, and they didn't even really try. When you look at Song Remains the Same, I mean, he starts playing the thing on a 12-string electric guitar, and that's just not what they recorded it on originally, and it loses some of that feeling when you're playing it the way he played it. So there is some discussion whether or not they're live, but I tell you, I never saw them live. But you listen to people who did see them live, they just said that it was just this, and obviously, I mean, they were selling massive, they were filling places. And people that talk about it later would just say that it was just this overwhelming experience being there in the room with Led Zeppelin, listening to this stuff. Again, Song Remains the Same didn't capture whatever that feeling is that people used to have. But I was too young. But it'd be really interesting to listen to people that actually were at one of those experiences to talk about what that was like. That even a guy like George Will here would be able to would look at this and go, man, I get it. I understand what, he apparently is even buying the stuff himself and listening to it, and he understands. And yeah, at the time there would have been something to say about how this really does hit the adolescent mind, but it really was and is more than that. There was something really spectacular about what they put together, the thought that went into it, the production. Anyway, I don't mean to keep going on this, but hey, thanks for watching this video. Please like, subscribe, share any thoughts that you have. We'd love to hear from you. If you have any other things you'd like us to look up, old concert reviews or albums or even tapes that you'd like us to talk about, how we take them apart and what we do here at Audio Mover, we'd love to hear from you. Anyway, with that, have a fantastic day.